Certainly. Jeran Campanella is a content creator, investigator, and truth seeker who built one of the most infamous followings on the internet and then blew it up by doing something extremely rare these days, changing his mind very publicly. For 10 years, Jeran was one of the loudest voices in the flat earth movement, drawing millions of views across YouTube and fueling debate across the conspiracy world. But everything changed in late 2024 when Jeran traveled to Antarctica to put his belief to the ultimate test. There he witnessed the 24-hour sun and the southern celestial rotation, undeniable evidence to most that forced him to confront reality. The earth is not flat. And instead of running from the truth, Jeran ran towards it, and now is using his platform to promote critical thinking and evidence-based exploration. Today he hosts Fact Down and Interesting and other shows that challenge echo chambers, expose lazy thinking, and push people to think deeper, not follow blindly. Jeran says he's been called a shill, a sellout, a savage, and a genius, and everything in between, and he doesn't care. Because for Jeran, it's not about being right, it's about being real. And his upcoming book, Flat Wrong, chronicles his journey, his regrets, his redemption arc, and how anyone can escape mental traps, cult thinking, and YouTube brainwashing. Welcome to RfRx Talks, Jeran. Gotta unmute you. You're muted.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Sorry, we muted you
Oh,
earlier. There you
sorry.
go.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Happy to be here, and you guys have been very kind. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. This is exciting to get to have a conversation with someone who so publicly has changed their mind about something that they were pretty invested in. Because even though that's not in and of itself necessarily a religious topic, although we'll get into that later, I feel like that's something that we deal with here at Recovering from Religion a lot.
Yeah,
So
in
I
the
think there may be a
pre-show,
lot of
I was
crossover.
mentioning that I work the helpline, and quite often I will bring this subject up, and specifically Jaren's change of mind on this and what it's done to his life. And when people are talking about being concerned about changing their religious beliefs and admitting that to friends and family.
Hmm. Yeah. So, Rob, we got to give you credit for finding such an awesome guest for us this week. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you and Jaron met?
Well, yeah, that's fascinating. So people know that I'm involved with the Guerrilla Skeptics on Wikipedia project, which is run by Susan Gerbic, who's been a guest for us, and she's going to be a guest in a few weeks again, by the way. She hasn't really talked about that subject because she does other things. She's very involved with the whole skeptical movement, and she was supporting LA Skeptical. And one of the speakers she told me about was this guy who changed his mind. He was an influencer, and now he's saying the Earth's a globe, and we're going to have him talk. And they were really concerned about what was going to go on to not have a skeptic give a talk at a skeptic conference. So I watched. I couldn't go live, but she recorded it, and I watched it, and I was floored by it. So because I have the opportunity to interview people for my column, video interviews for Skeptical Wire, I asked Jeran if he wanted to do a full-blown interview on it, and that's the first time that we talked. We've kept in touch, chatting a little bit on Facebook also. But I thought it would be really good to bring his story here.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you did. Jaron, have you been getting inundated with requests for appearances lately after having made such a public change of mind? Or how has that impacted your kind of online persona and circle?
No, I wouldn't say I definitely was getting more before. Yeah, it's difficult to say. I don't think enough people in the science community or skeptical community have heard about it or really care much, and I don't think they really want to reward somebody who was wrong for so long. I know that's kind of weird to say, but that's kind of what I've seen. That it's just nobody wants to be like, let's praise this guy because of what I did for the last 10 years, which is obviously lead a bunch of people into a belief that is now that I look back, I see it as a cult. And so, and I get it. I understand that I shouldn't be rewarded for that. It's an interesting story. It's good to tell, but I think it's better to try and get people to see the error of their ways earlier than me. Don't wait 10 years like it took me, because really what you do is you build up a barrier. It's your brain doing it, and you don't. It's done subconsciously. But it seems like if somebody's seeking some sort of validation somehow, and they start to get it from saying things that are wrong, usually because people will respond. So let's just say back when I started talking about flat Earth, um, I would get one comment that says "drink bleach, stop being such an idiot," versus 5 or 10 that would say, "Wow, you're onto something. I've always felt this way. My grandpa said the Earth was flat. You brought me back to God. I was an atheist and now I'm back to God." So like all those things tend to make you think that you're on the right track because
Mhm.
you can't really fathom the idea of all these people that agree with you and you are wrong. So that was the kind of the thing I think that trapped me there is that, and then you get invited to speak at a conference, right? And then in your mind, you don't think people that are wrong get invited to conferences very often. At least the way I looked at it, I didn't think so. So you start to have all these people back you, and then these people think you're funny and they think your videos are great. And so you kind of, I think your brain builds a barrier that it doesn't
Mhm.
let certain information in. And
So,
yeah,
so you mentioned the thing about God right off the bat there that this person said you brought them back to God.
right.
So when yeah, so talk about how did you start believing in flat Earth, and was it because of religious reasons?
No, I guess I would say that flat Earth kind of made me look again at Christianity a little bit, but I had already gotten out of that. So basically, my wife and I we started talking about if we had a baby, what would we raise them as? She was raised Bible believing Christian, and I was raised Catholic. And so she'd say, oh, we're going to raise them to believe in the Bible. And I'm like, well, no, I don't really think we should do that. It's kind of man-made. She, what do you mean? The Bible's man-made. So we already had this argument where we didn't know how to. And then we said, well, let's actually look into this and see, where the truth lies. And so I remember laying in bed and we held hands and we prayed to God, give us a year to look for you outside of the Bible. And if you're real, then we'll come back to you. And if not, then, we'll forget it. So within a month, we had realized that all of religion was garbage. Just in the fact that we finally read the Bible for the first time on our own, without a pastor there to give us his spin on it, or the Catholic Church has basically just readings that it reads. It doesn't read the whole Bible, and they kind of tell you not to because they wrote it. But it got to the point where we just no longer saw the truth in it, and when you read the Old Testament, you're like, this God is not a loving, caring God, and there was just so many things I had a problem with, and so we got away from that, and I became an atheist, and I became very science minded, and in doing research on that, I wanted to debate Christians, and then I just found out that a lot of the atheists were, to me, it looked like they were just as religious as the religious people. So, because I saw them basically getting on top of people, going after people that were religious, but they didn't have really all the correct answers. They just seemed to be doing it from a left right kind of position, right? Like it's basically like teams. And it was, I still remember it was a Facebook forum where somebody showed up and said, the Earth's 6,000 years old, prove me wrong. And then a bunch of people showed up and they started saying, well, we know that the Earth's 4.54 billion years old because of carbon dating, and everybody was backing them up. And I'm sitting there reading this and I'm like, no, it's not carbon dating. It's, radiometric dating. And so I butted in and just kind of said something like, oh, it's actually not carbon dating. It's, and then all of a sudden they all attacked me. And it was really weird. It was like, no, no, no,
How
I'm on
dare you correct their scientific error?
right, right, right. I'm like, no, no, I'm on your team. I believe the same thing as you. But it just made me start to look at it a little bit differently. And I think that was my biggest problem is that thinking that because of the way that parishioners acted, if you want to call them parishioners, that has something to do with the main idea of what science is, right? So it doesn't matter what people say about science. It doesn't matter what people think about science. It just matters what's actually being done and it actually is science. So I think the problem is that when I see people acting weird, then I took it as, oh, well, science must be just another religion. And just because people treat it that way doesn't make it false, right? So I think that's what the problem was. And then I said, oh, everything looks like a religion and everything looks like a scam. So my wife and I kind of said, let's just only believe what we can prove to ourselves. So it seemed like a good idea, right? Start from the ground up and not believe things because men told us so. So we started doing that. And then right away, she asked something she's looking out our second floor window at our house. And she said, do you think the earth could be flat? I'm like, what? No, what do you mean? She's like, well, it kind of looks flat. I'm like, no, it's ridiculous. Planes go around it. You've went to Germany going east. I've gone to the Philippines going west. I'm like, the earth's the ball. And she said, well, I thought we were starting all over from what we could prove ourselves. And I said, well, yeah, but some things are fundamentally true. That was my position originally. And then it wasn't a week or two later that I saw for the first time that flat Earth map that I'm sure many people have seen. That's just a azimuthal projection of the globe. But for the first time, I looked at it and realized that planes could go around that map. And it really shocked me that I just had got done telling my wife, like really cocky, like I almost think I said she was like it was stupid that she said that. I said like, what? That's stupid. The Earth can't be flat. But then I'm looking at this map and I'm like, oh my goodness, like why? And I kind of felt like that my brain had blocked me from even thinking about how could planes go around a flat Earth. And then I just once I saw that map, I'm like, oh man, planes can go around this. So I just kept trying to disprove that map, and I kept running into problems with doing it. And then I made my first video about flat Earth, and so many people were on board because I think
How long ago, Jeran, how long
yeah,
ago was that?
that was February of 2015. So a
So
little
that's
long.
right about, is that right about the time the famous series that I always hear people refer to is Mark Sargent's Flat Earth Clues? Was it?
Yeah, that was the so we became flat earthers, my wife and I, late 2014. And then she kept telling me to make videos, and I was like, no, I don't know how. I don't know, I don't want my face on the online. And then I don't want to be the face of flat Earth. And then I was just searching YouTube every once in a while, and I just happened to search that February day and saw this Flat Earth Clues. I was like, what is this? So I called my wife upstairs, and we started watching it. And we were just hooked because I think that the problem is um, because none of us deal with the round earth in our lives, right? So it doesn't make a difference to anybody. Nobody actually uses it for anything. I mean, as far as everyday people, you really don't need to know it. But that creates a problem that when somebody starts talking about those things, and most people who haven't thought about it, when they think about it for the first time, and then they can get lost in that, right? And I think that's what happens is that you can convince people by just saying like, well, what do you believe that we're spinning 1,000 miles per hour? So when you just say it like that, a person that's never thought about it kind of stops and goes, well, that's what they say. And it's like, yeah, but don't you think you'd feel it if you're spinning 1,000 miles per hour? How are you not feeling that? It's very easy to get somebody to start to question those things. And that's why people are able to recruit people to the flat earth is it's usually people that aren't educated, right? So there's not very many college graduates, if any, that are flat earthers. There are people who barely made it out of high school, or maybe they graduated high school and they just never thought academically since then. I don't think there's really enough physics education before college. So it's kind of like they glossed over it in school. And I used to tell people all the time, like, oh, they indoctrinated us into the globe, right? They didn't want, and it's true. And now I see why. It's because you don't want children getting to a certain age to where now they start questioning things where we could have told them already because it's already been decided. We've known for thousands of years. So, and it's already been proven. So it's just one of those things where if you're not really dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, that it can shock you. And I've seen it. I've seen people who you start talking to, and then you see these doubts start to enter their mind, right? And then you just start saying things like, well, yeah, they just tell us that we go 1,000 miles per hour, and they just tell us that we fly through space. We're flying 1.5 million miles per hour right now. Do you believe that? And you just get that person to have a moment of doubt. And then if they go searching on the internet, I think that there's enough out there now about flat Earth that people might fall down the wrong side. So that's really what I want to prevent now is people who fall for what I fell for, which was really just a confirmation bias, where you are not searching the internet from a position of an unbiased actual researcher, but you're searching the internet for the truth that you're looking for. So, and when you do that, you'll find it. So if you want the earth to be flat for some reason, let's say you're religious, which is what most people who are flat earthers are Christians. So if they start to think, oh, well, the Bible does kind of describe a flat earth, which it kind of does, but that's because the people who wrote the Bible believed the earth was flat. So it's not surprising to me. But to them, and I think that that's what I've seen the most of is the people who have the hardest time getting out of flat earth are the religious people. Because once you've attached it to God and you say, oh, God created this flat earth, and if you believe in the globe, you believe satanic things, well, then that just prevents that person from ever seeing that they're wrong, right? Because then they've already associated it with satanic things. So that's the biggest thing I get. I get all the time. People tell me I work for Satan, or that well, how much did I sell my soul for, or what did it cost? And it's always these religious people that just feel very strongly about whatever their personal beliefs are, even though you could tell them, hey, 95% of Christians don't believe this. So, but they don't care. It's just they get locked and they kind of, I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, I would say it's probably more than 95 don't believe it. But my question is,
Yeah.
what percent of flat earthers believe it because of religion or have deeply embedded religion in it?
At least, yeah, 80, 90%.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say there's no flat earther that's atheist. Those would be incompatible because the flat Earth is a creation, is the way it would be described, right? It
Well,
can't be
I,
accidental.
I would just differ on that, and it's probably a tiny percent because I know one of the more famous people a while ago was basically kicked out of the movement because he was an atheist and was a flat. He believed it was aliens, so that's another way to
Okay,
go, right?
that's true. I have heard the aliens built
Yeah, yeah,
the Earth. Yeah,
yeah. We're on some alien construct, kind of like in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where the Earth was created by pan-dimensional mice. I mean, as an
yeah,
experiment, something like that, right?
yeah.
Well, and I love how you described, Jaron, how easy it is to kind of fall down this rabbit hole once you start looking to confirm a pre-existing belief, because flat Earth seems like it's exactly the kind of topic that would be very sort of susceptible to the kind of pseudoscience type of language that we see oftentimes coming up in some of the other varieties of Christian apologetics, where you start hearing these references to, oh, there was an article by a physicist that proves all these things, and
Hmm.
start going into very complicated, complex topics that your average reader does not have a background in, and even a well-educated person that isn't a specialist in that field could easily get confused when you start throwing at them a bunch of complicated data and formulas and tables and graphs and charts and images. You could convince someone of almost anything if they're not an expert in that field, and say, look, here's this published article, it clearly shows all of the following. um, and it seems like this in particular is one where you were describing some of the maps and things you were looking at, where it can be very easy to mislead someone with very little effort, if you're using things that appear to be scientific in nature, and you're talking about a topic that is outside of someone's area of expertise. Did
Which,
you?
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was going to say that. You're exactly right. I mean, things like the curvature formula, right? So once I learned that nobody knew that, I went around and asking people, well, do you know the rate that the Earth curves? And they would say, no, nobody knows that. And then from that, you'd be like, well, that's why they didn't teach us, is because it's outrageous, right? And so then they're interested, like, yeah, why wouldn't we learn the curvature formula? Like, you've never heard of 8 inches per mile squared? And no, I've never. So, but the problem with that is again, why would you need to know something that you'll never use? There's nobody who uses the curvature formula of the Earth. You just don't use it. You're never, and so it just is one of those things that you can get people's mind away from the proper way of thinking, which is let me, if you get a question you don't know the answer to, then you need to go to probably the experts, to the people who have put time and effort into studying it, not to YouTube guys who, are in their mom's basement and just piping off and saying all kinds of crazy things. Because I think it's alluring to people because right now we're in a place where the world seems like a bunch of lies. I
Mhm.
think that it's government structures aren't great. You always have these corruption everywhere, so it is very susceptible to people thinking, "Oh, everything's a lie," right? And you go too
Yeah.
far, and so that's the problem. And I've seen it actually, a lot recently too. That the Charlie Kirk thing happened, for example, and then everybody in the flat Earth world gets on this thing. It's a fake. He didn't die. He wasn't shot. He didn't get killed. I've heard things. It's a hologram. I've heard people say it's an act or it's AI, which doesn't make sense. I'm like, what do you mean AI? The people were there. It happened. So it's just you can see them start to go downhill, and it happened to me too. They call themselves truthers, right? But the actual end goal of a truther is when you realize that there is no truth. That's where you end up. You end up uh, questioning everything, and then there's always going to be anomalies, right? If you watch a news story, let's say something happens in the world today, and you watch CNN, and then I watch CNBC, and somebody else watches Fox, those three people are going to have very different opinions of
Mhm.
that event. And then you have that problem of they all start talking to each other with different opinions, with different facts, and then they now start thinking that everything, well, there is no truth anymore. So that's why, like Rob said, I started a show called Fact Down, where I just was trying to remind people that facts still exist, that we do have facts, that there are truths. And so you can't get away from that to the point where you no longer believe anything. And I think there's a lot of people in the world, more than you would even want to know, that think all of history is a lie and think all of, scientific advancement since the 1600s is a lie. And they'll think like, oh, well, we don't even know how to build the pyramids, so the people before us were way more advanced than us. There's all these lines of thought that really destroy people's minds. And then when you've got people at the top of these flat Earth world, and they have learned, and I can see that, they've learned the things that are the trigger things, the things that you can say to somebody like do you feel like you're spinning? Do you feel like you're flying through space? Um, that make people, we're on a water ball flying through space with, water attached to the sides of it. Things like that will make people that have never thought about it perk their ears up, and then they're interested in it. And then once you have them there, since you don't have a lot of scientific people that people know about, like where they can go to get answers, tend to have the conspiracist kind of taking over. And then YouTube didn't help anybody because YouTube obviously wants to make money from people viewing their stuff, right? Well, for some reason, Flat Earth is like the number one, or one of the number one, or one of the top viewer retention times. So what YouTube bases things on is viewer retention. So if you do a 4-hour video and you only have people tuning in for 15 minutes, YouTube will kind of trend your stuff down because it means that you're doing long videos, but nobody's watching it or they're leaving. And so they kind of let the algorithm, get rid of you. But if you're somebody who does a 4-hour video and people watch it for 4 hours, YouTube looks at that and says, this person is engaging. They're getting the people to watch for 4 hours. So they promote you. So that's the way Flat Earth went from 2015 through basically 2020 or 2019-ish, before they started to catch on, and then they changed the algorithm a little bit. But that was a problem because it was really blowing up, if you remember, in those days, because YouTube was pushing those people further. And now that might not have been somebody sitting at a desk doing it. It might have just been the algorithm, the AI or whatever they were using.
Yeah, it's definitely algorithms. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've heard the story from that period of time, and
Yeah.
maybe it's still true today. I don't know. But like somebody says, I wonder if Kennedy was assassinated just by lone gunmen. And you watch a few Kennedy assassination videos, and then YouTube decides, ooh, you like this conspiracy? How about flat Earth?
Right.
And I know so many people who've told me that that's what happened, and that's when they even first heard that that was a thing on YouTube.
Right. Yep, definitely. Because again, I mean, think 20 years ago, before the internet, or 25 years ago, if you started to think the earth was flat, who are you going to talk to? And if you talk to anybody, they're going to tell you that you're wrong, and you're probably going to realize that you're wrong because there's just nobody to back you up. Now the internet's here to
Yeah.
where you could be very wrong about something. You say it, and in a world of 300, or I'm saying in a world, but in a country of 350 million people, it's very easy to find 20, 30, 40 that will agree with you. And so once you've seen that, you now think you're onto something, no matter what
Yeah.
it is, no matter how crappy your idea is. You just feel like people are with you, so therefore you should keep going.
And
And
the thing that feeds into that, and I want to mention it because you
yeah,
said like they'll just say something that is going to make you feel like they're correct. Like, do you feel like you're going 1,000 miles an hour? Do you feel
right,
like you're on a curved ball? Right? I had never heard this term until I started talking to you and others about this, and then I looked into it. And there's a term that's been around a long time in psychology, which I had never heard. It's called naive realism. Naive realism. And this, I'm reading the AI overview, I just Googled it. The tendency to believe that one's perception of the world is an objective and an unbiased reflection of reality.
right.
So basically, what I feel or what I see is right, and the hell with anything that says otherwise.
Right, correct. I mean, you could just look at the sun in the sky and tell somebody, they say that's 867,000 miles wide. That's ridiculous.
Right.
And that's just personal incredulity. It's not, you have no basis in that. You're just saying it. But to most people, they've never done any experiments on the sun or the size or the distance. So to them, it's very easy to draw them into that. And it's hard for me to talk about now because I'm actually saying things that make it seem like I was doing this in a nefarious way. But you're not doing it in that way. You're doing it truly believing that that is the truth.
All
So
right. So yeah. So let's tell your story because people here
sure.
don't know the whole thing. All right. So you're a flat earther and you're a big influencer. You have so many followers and whatever. You've had quite a following, and then you hear about this thing that might be happening in Antarctica. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I guess it would be right around January of 2024 that we did a debate with a guy named Will Duffy. He was a pastor who was starting to make anti-flat Earth videos. Somehow Dave Weiss got a hold of him and said, do you want to do a conversation with this guy, Austin Whitsitt? And he said, sure. So, then they had it on my channel. I was doing a debate show. So I had those both on my show. That's the first time I met Will. And then he had kind of said something like, well, you'll be hearing from me in the future. I was like, okay, whatever. So come about the middle of the year, there was these videos that were coming out that were talking about this big experiment going on, and it was going to be 24 flat earthers and 24 globe earthers, but you didn't know what it was talking about, and you didn't know who was in charge of the channel. It was meant to be that way. It's like cryptic. And so nobody really cared about it. We all just kind of dismissed it until it was revealed who the person behind the channel was, and it was the pastor Will Duffy. And he said that he was going to take people to Antarctica. And so then my ears perked up. And the reason for me was because since 10 years ago, I've always known that the 24-hour sun in the south would be impossible on a flat Earth. So rather than go and look and actually do research on it or actually try and get down there and check it for myself, you just kind of chalk it up to, oh, they're lying to us about the South. And then you just do everything from that point. So that's kind of how I operated. Now, when he's saying that, I'm like, wait, you're going to take people there? Like I said, you can't take people there. People can't go to Antarctica. And he's like, no, we're going to go with this company ALE. I'm like, well, you have to pay $1 million to do an assessment. And he's like, no, they already paid that money. We're just going as tourists with them. So I'm like, oh. So I started to be interested in it. Like, this was a chance for me for the first time to actually find out if I was right. Right. It seemed like a lot of the flat earth stuff was almost like at a point where it's like, oh, well, we'll never know. It's just kind of out there. And so this was my chance to say, okay, well, if I'm right, then the world deserves to know. And if I'm wrong, well, my audience deserves to know. Right. I've been saying this for 10 years. So it was a unique opportunity for me. And it was one that I wasn't afraid of because of the fact that everything I tried to do was on a truthful level. I certainly would never want to lie to people. It certainly was never any goal that I had. It wasn't an intent. I believed I was telling the truth. I believed what I was saying. However, a lot of it was based off of the idea that the South that we're taught is a lie. And so I knew going down there, I had all these things that I wanted to check. And I said, I'll go down there and I'm sure I'll find something that doesn't match. And so I'll be able to bring that back. Now, I went down there and every single thing I'm talking about to a T matched exactly the globe model, and zero things, and I mean zero, matched the flat Earth model. So at that point, you don't have, and maybe it takes seeing it. A lot of people have asked me, what if somebody else went and came back and said what you said? Would you have believed them and changed your opinion? And I can't really say that. I wish I could know that, but I do think if it was somebody like me that had been a flat earther for 10 years and they came back and said that the Earth was a globe, I'd be very interested in everything they had to say.
Now
So I'd be
you've
watching
had this experience in reverse because you have other friends who are influencers. We mentioned a few, Mark Sargent, etc.
Sure.
And so they didn't go. So did they believe you when you were live streaming from there and then came back and continued to talk about it?
Yeah, very few. I mean, some of the bigger names, Patricia Steer, a lot of people know her. She was in Behind the Curve, the movie. Um, Paul on the Plane, also well known. Robbie Davidson, who put on all of the Flat Earth conferences 2017, 18, 19, and 20, 19 was the last one. He switched back to a globe. So there was some bigger names and it all happened kind of very quickly right away. And then it just died. Then you have them against us and everybody saying that we must have got paid off or we must have been in trouble with the government and this is how we paid it back. So yeah, a couple people did believe us, and then many people just don't. But I think the people who don't, here's my opinion. When you become a flat earther, you usually tell your friends and your family to F off at some point because you would have brought it up to them. There would be arguments at dinner, arguments at Thanksgiving, whatever. And you create a strife between that family member and you. So I think that once you hear that maybe you were wrong, so I come back and say, hey guys, we were wrong. The Earth's not flat. To them, again, their brain is going to block. They're going to take any other excuse rather than they're wrong, right? If they have to admit they're wrong, then what comes with that is the fact that they have to go back to their family and friends, apologize, make amends and things that they don't want to do. So I think it's easier to just say, Jeran's a liar. Jeran got paid off. Jeran didn't actually go on the trip. I've had people say like, oh, he got bought a house. So Jeran got 2 wives. I mean, you name it. I've heard all of it. It's my favorite one is I'm a clone, that I'm not the same person that I was and I have lost a lot of weight and I've been working out. It's funny because somebody put in one of my comments, it says the old Jeran was a lot fatter and uglier than this guy. Thanks. All right. I'll take that.
It's like kind of a backhanded compliment, I
know.
guess.
Like, all right.
Wow. Thanks,
So, I've heard it
Internet.
all. I've heard it all. But they are very vitriolic and just these people that I used to go around saying like flat earth makes you a better person, and it makes you a terrible person. And so that's very difficult to know that some people that are in the flat earth may be there because of me. So I've really made a point to make my voice known, and they all just block me. So that's another thing I didn't realize, that the YouTube world online is a echo chamber like you wouldn't believe, because they've been conditioned to, if somebody's speaking out against flat Earth, well, they must be satanic, they must be paid off, so you block them. And if you don't know how blocking works on YouTube, once you block somebody, you don't see any of their videos anymore. They basically don't exist. You don't see their comments anymore. So all the flat earthers are doing that. They're blocking everybody who's saying anything different than them. So they live in a world where they turn on YouTube and all they see are other flat earthers talking about flat Earth.
Well,
So
and that's a really important point because, a
yeah,
lot of people will say something like, "Oh, I'm going to go research this topic." And what they mean by that is they're going to Google it or they're going to watch YouTube videos about it. And while
right.
there's certainly plenty of educational content on the internet to be had, this is entertainment primarily. Like, there are
Right.
algorithms making sure you're engaging. People are getting paid to, make more engaging content. This is not the same thing as doing research in a
No.
scientific sense, and
And
it's
and I
easy to
would do my
conflate the 2.
I would do my videos with humor in them, right? There'd be some funny skit or something. I mean, one of my best watched videos was like a spacewalk, to where my wife and I just did voiceovers, pretending that we were the astronauts, and it was just really funny because they're basically doing nothing. They look like they're doing nothing. They're just floating around, and we were just making jokes about it. But the fact that there isn't somebody doing that kind of content from the science side, right? So who is the funny science person that's putting out funny little skits, and there's just not a lot of that. So it's hard to
Well,
find.
Bill Nye.
I'm a
Yeah,
big fan of crash courses, on YouTube. That's
crash
a
courses.
good
I don't even think I've
series.
heard of it. I'm gonna write that down.
Ooh, let me
I
get
haven't
one.
heard of that either.
Oh, you guys. Okay, stand by for links.
Oh, somebody put in the chat, Forrest Valkai. That's true.
Oh yeah, that's okay. So it just seems like there's, I guess, it's just really easy to rope people in, and then they, how it is. If you, the way YouTube works basically is, if once you get somebody to start watching you a few times, they become invested in you. And so from there, you kind of have them trapped. Again, this is subconsciously done, but now looking back, you can go, "Oh man, everybody that started liking me, it was because of my personality and things like that." But I'm leading them down a scary wrong path, and that's something I'll have to live with my whole life. It sucks.
So this is something that's talked about by people who were pastors and then left their faith and became atheists. There's a famous person, Dan Barker, who is the head of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, who wrote his autobiography, and I read that about that. I mean, he was also a musician. He wrote Christian music, and it's still played to this day, keeping people in the faith or converting them. And he feels very guilty having done that. But at the time, he believed it, so he thought it was a good thing to do.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I wish you could just, once something's online, like they say, it's there, because I wish you could just go through and wipe all my content that I ever did. But you can't do that, right? And a lot of people have taken it and repurposed it, and they've put it out, and I'll just be going through TikTok or something and see myself talking about flat Earth, and it's on a video that somebody's put up recently that they're trying to push to flat Earth with my
Oh
voice.
man, did you hear what happened to Dave McKeegan, where there's this channel that's
Yeah,
mimicking his stuff?
yeah, they're terrible.
And
Is
TikTok
awful.
won't do a damn thing about it. That's unbelievable.
I don't believe in like censoring free speech, but at the same time, I wouldn't care if TikTok burned down, to be honest with you.
Wow.
Place could just
Well,
go bad.
I really appreciate you bringing this up in this space because, like Rob mentioned, we hear this oftentimes from people who were pastors or missionaries, and then really regret, leading people into something that at the time they fervently
Mhm.
believed, and
Or,
then
or by the way,
later,
Cara, parents and their children, right? Parents raise
yes.
their children that way, and then they don't believe anymore. And now the adult children are their enemies.
Yes, and people deal with a lot of feelings of guilt and shame, like what you're describing around this. And I know this is kind of all still new and just now happening to you. So I want to let you know that we have resources about that. But also, I would love to hear from your experience as someone who, like, obviously had the courage to go ahead and do this whole process publicly, knowing that there was going to be backlash. Do you have any strategies that you've used to kind of help you deal with these feelings that are coming up as you're sort of publicly changing sides on an issue, knowing that there is going to be backlash?
No, I just think that my personal integrity and the knowledge that truth is what's important is the only thing that gets me through it. Because otherwise, I mean, I see people still in the flat earth that even after this are still making money, they're still doing well. And that's very upsetting, right? Because you're looking at it and you're, number one, you're thinking, oh man, if I just would have not gone on this trip, I could still be doing what I was doing, still be making money, still have people that followed me and liked me. So there really is no strategy other than making sure that truth is what's important and being honest is what's important. And if it wasn't for that, I mean, if you're a bad person in any way, in any way, I would think that that person is going to just take the easy road, which is to continue, pushing what you now know is not true. And that's unfortunate, but I've seen it. I've seen people that do it. I've seen the way Dave Weiss, if people know who that is, Flat Earth Dave, the way that he was like a friend of mine for 10 years. We talked at least weekly, and he has not talked to me since I got back from Antarctica. So,
And yeah,
things like that.
talk about Sargent and Steer.
Well, so Steer is now no longer a flat earther. She's been great. She went back to her regular life. Just said that she, now sees that she was wrong. And Mark Sargent, on the other hand, is somebody who's really doubled down. Somebody was just playing a portion of the end of that movie, Behind the Curve, and he said something I didn't hear originally. He said, even if he wanted to leave flat Earth, he couldn't. He couldn't because the people wouldn't let him. I'd never heard that in that movie until I just heard it recently, and I was like, man, that's I mean, that should warn people that are flat earthers, that are their head guy is saying that even if he found out that the earth wasn't flat, he couldn't leave.
Well, I don't remember that either. And I do remember him saying essentially the contradictory thing in there, where he was asked if he was presented with evidence that the Earth was a globe, would he admit it? And he said, "Of course I would."
Yeah,
So
no,
that's really odd. He said two contradictory things in the same. By the way, you were in that documentary. Want to tell a little bit about that?
yeah. I just did a video on it the other day because I do still think that that video again is there's a lot of little things that kept me in flat Earth along the way that I wish wouldn't have happened, and it's you can't what good is wishing going to do? But one of the things they did was misrepresented an experiment that I did. And when somebody does that, it really pushed me further into flat Earth because I'm thinking, here's this documentary crew that came to do this documentary, and they lied about me in order to get the people to believe the Earth's a globe. So to me, as a flat Earther, I'm like, this is more evidence. And there's lots of things like that. I don't know. I think I pointed out to you that the Stephen Hawking did a documentary called Genius, where they faked the helicopter experiment.
This is the helicopter being hidden in post-production.
Right. So the thing about that is that I get it. It's a TV show. They're given artistic license, but they probably should realize that there's people out there like flat earthers that are very closely watching every single thing that so-called science is putting out. So if you're PBS or you're the Discovery Channel or Nat Geo, and you're Stephen Hawking, and then you fake an experiment, and then expect people to believe it, and then they find out it's fake, that you've done more damage than you can imagine, because it's now that's something that can be taken and shown to people and said, look, they lied about it here. And then I mean, there's people that are flat earthers, I guarantee, because of that show. Now, I mean, again, is it a lot of, no, maybe not, it's not a lot, but it's still something that, that bothered me personally along the way. There's several things like that where people would, lie about you, or I don't know, MC Toon is a guy who has a channel, and they faked a document one time where they were just playing tricks on flat earthers. And the fact that a bunch of flat earthers fell for it, and then we all got exposed as falling for it. But it really, when you see something like that, what you're doing is you're not endearing people to you, right? There's nothing after that that makes me go, oh, now I want to be a globe believer. I want to be like you guys who trick flat earthers and think of them as less than human and play little tricks. Like they basically faked a whole document that said Office of Strategic Global Planning or something, and then it was like this whole doc, and then they like spilled a trash can in one of their streams, and a camera showed it, so everybody saw the document, and then everybody started running with it, making videos about it, saying, "Look at these guys work for this department of the government," and it ended up being just a lie. So I mean, things like that, and I've talked to MC Toon about it. Now I changed my opinion about him because originally I told him, you're just making people. No, you're not converting anybody the way you're acting. You're not converting anybody. And he goes, I'm not trying to convert anybody. I'm like, you're not trying to convert flat earthers? He's like, no. He said, I'm providing entertainment for globe earthers, and I'm doing it in a way that will prevent anybody from going to become a flat earther because we make fun of them so much. So it just made more sense then. I was like, okay, I get it. Because that's something that now, as a globe earther, I get. You do whatever you can to keep people from falling down that rabbit hole. So it just has changed my opinion a lot of, like I said, I used to believe like we should never indoctrinate kids into any belief. And indoctrinate, what I mean by that is the definition would be to teach something uncritically, right? Which is what we can all admit when we learned about the globe, you were not at an age that you could critically assess that. You were just told you live on this spinning ball and that gravity holds us to it. And, so it is indoctrinating, but I understand now why. So it's just a whole 180 of my opinions of things of where before you're using it as like evidence against the globe. And now I'm like, oh no, I get it. I mean, we don't want children getting too far in their life where they're not told where we live, because then they will be very confused, or they might even tell you they don't believe you. If we waited until they were like 12 or 14 and then told them, oh, by the way, you live on a ball, they probably wouldn't even believe you. So it's better to teach children when they're 4, 5, 6, and they kind of everybody grows up with it, and that's just the belief because it's true. And so I get it now. But yeah, I mean, Behind the Curve, the movie, that was a big problem. It was a good, if you've never seen it, it's a good documentary. It's good. It's well done. It's beautiful aesthetically. So they did a good job with that. But for whatever reason, they chose to cherry pick one particular observation out of my final. We went and did a experiment at a local. No, it's not local. It's a couple hours from here. But there's a 4 mile. What do you call it? A canal, straight shot canal. It's got a road right next to it. It's not traveled a lot because it's kind of on somebody's land that does. They have produce that they're growing there, and but I knew that that existed, and it was 4 miles long. So we started trying to figure out something we could do with that 4 miles. So we came up with the idea that we'd be able to shoot a laser through 2 panels and see where that laser hit the back panel, and then measuring the distance off the water, we could see if it stayed the same or if it changed as a curved Earth. So when we went out there and practiced, we couldn't get the laser to stay small enough, the beam, because it has a divergence that went bigger than the holes that we had cut. So we kind of were lost, and then we didn't know what to. So we did a backup experiment, which we called it. But the movie made it seem like that was our main experiment, and we just had a guy standing with a light way far away, 3 miles away, 4 miles away, and we're looking through my camera, and we're trying to get it lined up so that we can either see the guy with the light at the same height that I am shooting it, or we can't. And so we did a bunch of tests. We were doing observations, and a lot of times we saw it at both places, and then we saw it at neither place. And then there was one observation in the middle where I said, "We don't see the light. Where are you holding it?" And he says, "I'm holding it at 17 feet." And I said, "Hold it above your head." And then he holds it above your head, and in the viewfinder we see it. And I was like, "Oh, interesting." The reason I said interesting is because we had just done 23 feet and didn't see it, and then we did 17 feet and didn't see it. And then when he held it above his head, we did see it. So that told me, oh, interesting. That's a middle result, right? So it's not 19. I mean, it's not 17. It's not 23. So, but the way the movie did it is they put it at the end of the movie, and they just put that one scene. So all you see is me saying, "Oh, we don't see your light there." And then I said, "Hold it up above your head." Then he holds it above his head, and then I say, "Interesting." And then the movie ends. And everybody ran with the idea of, "Oh, look at these flat earthers prove the globe." And yet they still don't even accept their own experiments. But that's not an experiment and it's a cherry picked one, and experiments should be repeatable, right? And we did right after that, we tried doing it again to show it happening again, and we couldn't get it. We couldn't see the light anymore. So to me, that was very, I wish I could have got out of flat Earth a lot earlier, but that really told me, hey, these guys are lying about my experiment. They're making it seem like it's even legit. Like all 25 people that were there that night walked away saying nothing was proven. Not one person thought anything was proven because the results were all over the place. It was a mess. But then you see the movie come out, you see the end scene, and then everybody believes that that movie proved the curved Earth, which is embarrassing to me, also for the globe community. I'm like, look at all these people. They have run head first into this, and they think it's actually some sort of proof, and it's not. It was cherry picked. So it actually gave me even a worse opinion of them. So again, that's people, not science, right? That's where I differentiate now between people make mistakes all the time. People,
Yeah, I mean, and it's the same thing with the movie that you mentioned Stephen Hawking was connected with, right? I'm
correct.
sure he didn't know what they were going to do in post-production. So it's
No.
these people have a goal and they have a point of view, no matter who it is. If it's one of these documentaries on Gaia talking about some pseudoscience nonsense,
Right.
or it's somebody making a science documentary, they have their own point of view and their goal, and they are going to tweak things to make it look that way, even if their original footage was bad, which is
And they know
unfortunate.
that the Earth's a globe, right? So they know it's not a big deal. So we fake that it's the Earth's a globe. So to them, it's not a big deal. And I
Yep.
get it now. I get it. I totally get it. But at the time, or as a flat earther, you see that and you're like, well, the only reason you would ever fake that is because the Earth is flat and you have to lie about it.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's
let's go back to Antarctica, please.
sure.
So
Okay. So
just
yeah, telling that story. So
you didn't just like record stuff and tell people about it. You live streamed from there, right? Which is amazing.
yeah, no, I mean, and that's something we didn't even know we'd be able to do. We did find out they had Starlink down there that you should be able to, but it was the first year that the camp itself had Wi-Fi service. So we had said if we can, we will. Yeah. So I was able to live stream every day I was down there. Um, we interacted with the chat. There was so many things that we did to prove that we were there. We went live right at midnight to show that the sun hadn't set. That's when I
So,
could.
so what did the people who did not change their mind, who had stayed home, say was going on? I mean,
That
they
it was
should have
fake, that
been.
we were in a studio, that we were in the Sphere in Las Vegas, that it's CGI, that we did it a year before, that we went to the north, you name it.
Jaron, I've been in the Sphere in Las Vegas. It isn't that big, and it's not 360 either.
Don't tell them that. They'll tell you. And
It's
it's
only
funny.
like maybe 180, maybe.
And I gave there on my channel right now. There's all the live streams I did, and then there's also a 5.5 hour chest cam footage that's from that 4-day trip. And in that footage, I get into first of all, we land the 757 on the ice. I get out of the plane. That's all on camera. We get into a smaller little La Bamba plane and fly around the Ellsworth Mountains. Um, there's so many things going off in the distance. It literally is impossible that it's fake. Literally impossible. And it's done in a way that we had multiple cameras, like 7 cameras, all recording each other. So you can't, I mean, how would you fake that? I mean, I could get it where if somebody wants to say the moon landing's fake and you're like, okay, there was one camera. I could see that argument. But when you're talking about this, where we have 7 cameras all live streaming, 360-degree cameras showing you can look in any direction, that is, it's impossible to fake.
And you guys were answering,
Yeah.
statements that it was fake live, like the next day. Oh, they said this. Let's show that that's not true by flying a drone or something. And that still
Right.
wasn't good enough.
No, and then they say that we spent too much time trying to prove we were there, and that's evidence that we weren't.
Oh, jeez.
This is another thing conspiracy theorists will do, and I don't know about religious, but it's conspiracy theorists will take anything and use that as evidence in their favor. It doesn't matter what the actual truth is; they can just spin anything in any way, and it becomes very easy for them. It doesn't matter. Dave McKeegan was on my channel the other day. We were doing a debate against somebody who says we didn't go to Antarctica, and the guy asked Dave McKeegan to swear that he went to Antarctica. And Dave McKeegan said, well, here's my problem with that. He says, I don't think it's going to make a difference to you if I do it or not. And then sure enough, later on a show that those guys went and did, they were saying, oh, and he didn't swear, because he didn't swear because he didn't go. And it's like, well, if he did swear, they would then have gone to that other show and been like, and we know that it's fake. We've already proven that. And this guy swore, so he's a liar. So you can't win. You really cannot win.
That's so, but he wasn't under oath in a criminal trial or anything. There would be no repercussions if he swore and lied. Like, why wouldn't, like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't really get it either. I mean, as soon as he said that, I said, I swear I was there in Antarctica. Like, I didn't care. I don't give a shit. But Dave was just like saying, well, it doesn't matter what I say because you're going to use use it against me, which they ended up doing anyway. So he got that right. So it's just crazy to see the backflips and hoops that these guys jump through.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting to me. Also, I love that your background word is interesting because
Yeah.
some people point out that I say that a lot on this show, but things are interesting.
They are, aren't they? I love the word.
Yes.
Do you, Kara?
We-
I have never noticed that.
That's interesting. No, we like learning here.
Good.
But given that, you mentioned earlier in the show, Jaron, that you were kind of familiar with all of these talking points and you would have an answer ready. Or maybe you said that on your interview with Rob. Anyway, I remember you saying that, you two would have a quick answer anytime somebody brought up a new bit of evidence or was demonstrating in a new way. Hey, actually, maybe flat Earth isn't exactly right. So you probably, I imagine, weren't surprised that people had these retorts, but I'm interested in, what was your mindset going into this? It sounds like you really did want to know the answer. Were you ready to change your mind? And what do you think got you to that point that was different than some of the folks that had this backlash after the fact?
So I guess about 6 months before the trip, I really started to kind of weigh the idea of, okay, what if I see it? And then I kind of thought, okay, maybe the map's just wrong, right? So if we see it, then the map's just wrong. So I spent a lot of time by myself trying to work it out, trying to find a way that the sun could do that. And I got to the point where I just said, oh no, it's impossible, because I knew that the way that they see the sun down there circling right to left versus where we see it in the north circling left to right. I said, that would require a change in direction of the sun, which we've never seen before. So I quickly realized it is a mutually exclusive observation, meaning that, and I really wanted to get the Globers to say that as well. And then when they did, I was like, oh, this is definitely it. So what I mean by that is I got Duffy, the pastor, I said, what if the sun sets when we're there? I said, what if the sun sets? He says, oh, then the globe is falsified. I'm like, yes. I'm like, yes, that's exactly right. And he says, and if the sun circles, then what? I'm like, then the flat earth is falsified. He's like, yep. So we did have that moment where we kind of saw, okay. And I think he's a globe believer and he knows that the sun's going to circle down there. So it wasn't like he was really putting anything on the line. He knew it, right? Whereas to me, it was seeing him put that on the line was like what I needed to know, like, okay, this is good. This is we're gonna know one way or the other. And then so 6 months before, as we start getting close to the trip, I actually thought that the trip would be canceled. I thought that the trip would not happen or that it would fall through or something. And as we kept getting closer, I think more and more it started weighing on me like, man, would they be taking me down there if the sun set? They're not going to let me go film it. They're not going to let me go film that the whole world's a lie. So I kind of started to say, man, and then I started looking deeper into this place that we were going, and I saw that people go there every year, and like 1,000 people go there every year. And it's like, okay, so I started to kind of come to the conclusion, and this is maybe a month before, like, oh man, we might see this. And so I guess that really, allowed me to kind of be open to the idea that I could be wrong. And if I was wrong, I needed to come back with the evidence that I could show people so that I could stand firm in my opinion. Because I knew that people would say immediately, like, well, what about Stephen Hawking? Well, what about when they faked this experiment? Well, what about when they misrepresented you in the movie? So that became the difficult part, is saying to myself, well, how am I going to answer that? Because I really don't have an answer, right? At least I didn't. But I kind of said, well, let's just go and find out first. There's not really any it's not worth worrying about until it actually happens. Now, I do wish I would have done a little bit more thinking about what would happen to me and my, I guess you'd call it my career, my income, what would happen to basically everything in my life, because it all has fallen down, right? It's all crashed. And then now I'm trying to go out and get a job and people won't even call me back. And then it's because of them. If they do one search on the internet, they're not going to hire me. There's no way, because it's not even a matter of, oh, well, this guy changed his mind. So he might, no, what a job's going to look at is whether or not this person's a liability, right? And when they see that I'm all over the internet and that there's people making videos about me, calling me every name in the book on YouTube, to them, that's a liability. There's no good that can come from hiring me. So, I guess if I would have thought too much about it, maybe it would have, sent me in the wrong direction. But I just didn't think about those things happening. And I didn't think about people that were my friends, like actually turning and, making videos, calling me a shill, so that kind of thing, I just didn't really expect. I don't know why. I guess I should have. But for somebody like me that people liked, 10-year person in the flat earth, I really thought there would be more um, respect and I don't know what you would call it. I thought more people would pay attention to what I was saying, figure out that they were wrong, and then be happy that we figured it out. Right? That's how I felt. I felt like, oh, thank God, now I know. And that's the weirdest thing, is I still have people that I'll be talking to, and then I'll say something about what do you think about the Earth? Do you think, what shape is the Earth? And they're like, oh, well, I've always thought it was a sphere, but now I'm open to it being flat. I'm like, okay, don't be. Let me tell you why. Like, I want to end that conversation right away, because now I know. And that's the difference, is that as a flat earther, I believed, and now I know. And so it's a much better feeling, but at the same time, it's very scary to see the people that are stuck in it, when you know that they're stuck in it and you know that they believe what's wrong, and that they, you want them to get out, and you can't get them because they're stuck like I was. And I get it. People would tell me all the time. They'd say things to me about flat earth, or say things to me about why the globe is true. And it's almost like your brain doesn't want to hear it. So it just dismisses it. Go ahead. Oh yeah, maybe that's true. But and you're not even taking it in and actually contemplating it. You are really legitimately making it look like you are, and then just kind of dismissing it. And it's done, again, subconsciously. It's not like in my head I'm thinking, oh, that's good evidence for the globe, I don't want to think about that because it might lead me down the globe belief. That's not what's going on. What's going on is that you are thinking that you're in the right, you know the truth. And so if somebody's saying something different, they're trying to sway you. They work for the devil. They are indoctrinated. They are, so that's the biggest problem, is that, now looking at it, I'm like, there's so many opportunities I had that I should have gotten out that I didn't. So that's unfortunate.
The parallelism here to somebody leaving a religion is so strong. I mean, people call angry that they have seen the light, that whatever their particular religion is wrong.
Mhm.
And well, I want to bring this information to my friends and family, and they don't want to hear it.
Right.
You're now being controlled by the devil, just as I with you. We're like, yep.
Yeah, there's people that were like good friends that I would talk to all the time, and like I'll just say to them, "Hey, how's it going?" And then they'll respond, "F you, Judas," and that's it. And it's I've had death threats. I've had people call my dad. I've had people call his wife, like 78-year-old woman, and say the most disgusting things you can imagine. Just said to that person, they don't know her at all. They think it's my mom. It's not even my mom, but it's just crazy. Somebody called my dad and told him, "You raised a rat. Don't you know what happens to rats?" my dad's like, who's this? And then you hang up. So it's just really weird, like disgusting things. And then I go on Facebook and I watch these guys and they're so cocky and they're so then I realized, okay, so what this is, imagine this, that if you didn't go to college and you graduated high school, maybe just started working a job, you've never had the opportunity in your life to actually pretend that you're smarter than somebody who did go to college, because you're probably not. And so what flat earth allows you to do is to then believe that you are in the right by not going to college, because the person who went to college learned lies and you didn't. You stayed out of college and now you know the truth because you weren't indoctrinated. So this is why those guys feel so cocky and they get in Facebook and they just talk like they know what's going on and that these other guys are idiots and, oh yeah, we live on a spinning ball. And I don't even think they realize how bad they look. It's like disgusting. It's like really disgusting behavior. And they're more than wrong. They are like, I mean, flat Earth is like embarrassingly wrong. It's not just like, oh, it was almost as one or the other. And I've actually told the science people the problem that I think happened with flat Earth is that you let flat Earth into the conversation and you started having debates against these guys. Well, that gives the appearance that there's equal standing. Oh, we have a flat earther and we have a globe earther and they're going to debate. Well, they're not equal. One of them is responsible for everything that we have and the technologies that we have and has been known for thousands of years and has been was a process getting to where we're at. And the other one is just some nonsense theory that somebody is just saying words. So those two things do not belong on the same debate platform. And then the thing is, the flat earther learns to get in these debates and learns these things that people don't know how to answer, and they'll go to like high level physics things like dark matter and dark energy, which the number one physicists in the world are still struggling with and don't know what's going on and don't really know what it is. So they're working on that, but then you're able to bring that up as a flat earther and make the other person look bad, because you're like, oh well, you guys just added dark matter because you couldn't find something, and so you just made up something and said, oh, there's dark matter there, but you've never seen it. And when a
Yeah, I've seen
person,
that in religious versus atheist debates too. Also, well, you can't explain that, therefore, so I don't have to explain God because you can't explain dark matter
correct,
and dark energy. Yeah.
right.
Well,
So again, it's just very
yeah.
easy.
And then, it's exactly the same issue with, people trying to push for, oh, we think you should teach the controversy in schools about, intelligent design versus evolution. Well, I'm sorry, there's not a controversy in science around that. These two things are not the same, and we're not going to pretend like they are. And I don't think we should pander to that, because to your point, all it takes is, in a debate, the debaters are not changing each other's mind. They're there
Right.
for the audience, and all it takes is someone who's very charismatic to show up, and whether it's on purpose or not, present information that is false or misleading to the public, that's then going to be very damaging
And there's
to
not really
people's
like
understanding of the concept.
there's not like good science debaters really like they would be debating on YouTube. What you have is some guy who's at his house who believes in the globe who's debating, right? But the problem is
Mhm.
those guys get a lot wrong. And so then if you can use that against them and say you were wrong about this, you lied about this, and then to, like you said, to the audience of a debate, you're looking, oh man, he did tell a lie. Oh, he doesn't know about that. So it kind of leads you
Mhm.
down the wrong path again. Um,
Then they're going to cherry pick that. Yes.
Right. And exactly that's what it is, right? So everything that a flat earther says is really just things that they learn that work well in a conversation, things to avoid at all costs. And, those are things like right now, you can ask a flat earther, where's the South Pole? They'll melt down. They will melt down because they can't answer that, because if there is a South Pole, the Earth's a globe. And we know that people go to a place called the South Pole. We know that you can get there in 6 hours from South America. You can get there from 6 hours from South Africa. You can get there in 6 hours from Australia. So on a flat Earth, that is now impossible. I mean, how can they all go to the same spot and take 6 hours in flight to get there? Where is that spot? And they'll melt down. So they just avoid that. If you ever hear that come up, they'll change the subject. They'll try and do anything they can. It's kind of fun to watch because they melt down. There's no answer to that.
Mm.
So once you learn those things too, as a flat earther, you know to avoid those. And the things that are bad for globers, they will bring up all the time, right? So somebody will say something like, well, go check your pool if there's any curvature in your pool. Because well, really, there should be, because for every 660 feet, it's only an eighth inch of curve, which is a nickel laid down. So you're not going to see that in a pool. You're not going to see it in a lake. You're not going to see it in a mile wide lake. Nobody can measure that. So that alone doesn't mean that the Earth's flat, but you can use that in a way, because we can't measure that. Can you measure if something's an eighth inch of curve over 660 feet? No, because even the atmosphere itself is going to change that observation by that much. It's only an eighth of an inch. So again, there's just enough things that you can get somebody to doubt in their mind. And then once there's doubt, from there, if they start searching YouTube, they're going to find a lot of flat earthers that all agree with each other and seem like they're onto something. And they're really not. There's nothing in flat earth. The best three arguments that flat earth has is that water finds its level, which is a globe claim. The globe claims water finds its level. It's just level on a globe is a sphere. It's just so big that we don't notice that it's curving. The other one is that we see too far. Guess what? That's true on the globe Earth. On the globe Earth, we see further than we should see geometrically because we don't live in geometry land. We live in a world with an atmosphere that acts like a lens at times because it's made of moisture. And so you actually can see things that are slightly behind the so-called curve. The air, the light ducks, the light bends. It's called refraction. So those two, and then what did I say? Water finds its level. We see too far, and then just the simple. You don't feel like you're spinning, and we don't measure curve. And again, yeah, we do measure curve. It just depends what you're talking about. And then we don't feel like we're spinning. I mean, everybody can hold up an item and just tell them, hold this phone up and now turn it once a day. That's how fast we're spinning. So you can't even see it moving. I mean, it's so incredibly slow. Now you say 1,000 miles per hour and you get people's mind on the wrong track. They start thinking, oh, I drive in a car 60 miles per hour. I can feel I'm moving. How would I ever be going 1,000 miles per hour and not know I'm moving? But again,
Right. I like the analogy of the hour hand on a clock. A typical clock, which only has 12, it has to
right.
go around twice the whole clock in 24 hours. Can you see that moving? You can't see that moving.
No, no. So that's the thing. And then I think people hear that 1,000 miles per hour and they are picturing a spin that's going like crazy. They say all the water would fly off. But then, if there's water on my phone and I'm turning it once a day, nothing's gonna nothing's gonna fly off.
Right.
So it's just
Right.
that all their best evidences have been refuted. They have no the map kind of made sense originally. I don't know how anybody in the South ever believed in flat Earth because the sun sets the opposite direction. It doesn't
That
get
would be a fascinating survey. Does everyone in the South think the people in the North are lying or something? I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't, but there's just not a lot of people that live down there,
Yeah,
right?
I
And that's
looked this up. You had said 5%, but I looked it up after you said that to me, and it's a little bit higher than that. It's like something like between 10 and 12%. But that's
okay.
It's still a lot of
Well,
people. That's a lot of
right.
people. It's like
So
so so you
one of
have
the
to believe all of those people are, I don't know, lying or in on it or don't pay attention. I don't know.
See, and it makes sense though, because if you go on look online and try to find videos of the 24-hour sun in the north, you'll find 10 times as many as you will in the south. Now, me just saying it like that, you might be, well, that's weird. Well, we just said that there's 10 times as many people that live in the north. So that's what should be the expected result.
Well,
The
also,
expected result.
also the countries are near the North Pole
Correct.
relatively, as opposed to it's a freaking long flight to get for
Yeah,
most
and
of
there's
the world to get to the Antarctic.
right. You can go to Alaska and see the 24-hour sun for
Right.
$1,500. You can't go to Antarctica and see the 24-hour sun for
How
1,500 bucks.
close did you get to the actual South Pole, by the way?
600, it's about 600 miles.
Wow, that's freaking
Yeah.
close.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I mean, even that, like seeing it all, then it made sense to me when you got down there and you're watching the sun dip and the sun got to its lowest at about 15 degrees dead south. And it hit me. I'm like, oh, like I could just keep walking every day towards the lowest part that the sun is. And every 69 miles I walk, that sun's going to tip up by 1 degree. So if I did, so I said we're at 15 and 35. So I'm like, oh, well, if I went 10 steps or 10 sections of 69 miles, then it would be at 25 and 25. And that's what the South Pole is. The South Pole is the place. There's only two places in the world, the North Pole and South Pole, where the sun stays at the same elevation and just does a circle every day. So I kind of came to that conclusion on my own. And then I realized how those guys found the South Pole back in whatever it was, 1900s when Amundsen Scott did it. So then I kind of, once you realize those things for yourself, I can never unsee that. There's no way I could come back and say the Earth's flat because I realized that it's not. The sun tells you what the Earth is. The sun is very good at that because it's such a great measuring stick, right? It doesn't change. It's the
Right,
same
right.
thing every day, every
All
year.
right, so let's talk about the other conspiracy theory with the short time we have left
Yeah.
that you recently changed your mind about also. So,
Ooh.
as I may have said before, I forgot if I said it here or in the pre-show, all flat earthers do not believe in moon landings or space or anything in orbit, right? Not all moon landing deniers are flat earthers. They just believe there was a historical lie. But flat earthers believe it was actually impossible to do this, right? And you were therefore on that side of it.
Right.
And you just recently changed your mind on that too. Want to tell that fairly quickly?
Sure. Yeah. So in talking with Dave McKeegan, who was on the trip with me as a globe believer, he went down to Antarctica with us, and we kind of got to be friends. And so I would bounce things off of him. And then so he did ask me, what I thought about the moon, and moon landing, and I said, oh no, I still believe that they faked that. And he said, all right, well, you want to do a show about it? And I said, okay, how do you want to do that? And he says, well, just I want you to bring me all the evidence that you had for the moon landing being fake, and then I will in real time, try and debunk it. Basically, was at it. I was like, okay, that's good. That'll be fun. I thought there was tons of things that I could think of in my head that I was like, oh, he'll never be able to debunk these things. So as I started to gather evidence, and then I would even ask on my show, I said, hey, if anybody believes that the moon landing was fake, please send me evidence so that I can, bring it up to Dave. Well, I kept getting all these messages from people saying like, oh man, good luck with Dave, man. We know that the moon landing didn't happen. I'm like, yeah, but where's the evidence? And then he would say, well, we just know it. We know it didn't happen. And I'm like, yeah, I know that, but I'm trying to do a show with Dave McKeegan where I'm supposed to give him evidence. So I'm like, can you go find some? So then I would just keep doing this, and I realized like nobody was bringing anything. And then it was like, oh boy. So then I kind of went through the things that I believed about it, and most of them were, problems with Google Moon, where maybe the distance that they say on the screen is not the same distance as they
Wait,
traveled
wait,
on
wait,
the.
wait, wait. There's a Google Moon? I didn't even know there was a Google
Yeah, you
Moon.
can go to the top of Google Earth, and you can switch to the moon, and then they've got it all mapped and everything.
Wow,
So
fascinating.
yeah, it was really cool. So then Dave, what he said to me that really got me, he said, that Flickr has the Apollo archives, which is like 16,000 photos. And he's like, those are in order, meaning that they didn't change the order. They're exactly as they came out of the magazine. And then he said, so if it's fake, wouldn't there have to be things in there that would tell you it was fake? I was like, oh, absolutely. So I started going through that. I remember late nights just, and it's like perfect. It is so good. It is, uh, anytime you think there's a problem, if you look close enough, it's not. I remember one point where I saw the lunar lander showing up. And I was like, wait a second, that they were driving that direction a few minutes ago. We'd be able to see it. So I went back in the photos, and sure enough, really tiny in the background, you see that little lunar lander. And as they're driving close to it, it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you start to realize that the impossibility of them faking that is more it's more impossible to do that than it is to go to the moon. So I mean, it and I still, if you would ask me today, would I bet my life that we went? No, I don't think I would argue that side, but I certainly would never argue or debate from the side that we didn't go, because I don't think that there's any evidence that we didn't go, really, other than things that are just anecdotal, or like we haven't gone back. Okay, I mean, just because if I went to Mexico and 50 years ago, if I hadn't gone back, it's not evidence that I didn't go to
Yeah,
Mexico.
Jaron, you haven't been to Antarctica again since last year, so it
Right,
looks like
exactly.
you didn't
See,
go the first time.
I
right.
knew
So
he wasn't really there. This
Yeah,
proves
clone.
it.
There's a clone. A clone.
right, it's the clone. So I mean, yeah. So then we did a couple videos. We did like I think 3 or 4 parts. Those are still on my channel. And yeah, by the
How
last
many
one,
hours was that? I heard a rumor.
oh man, it must have been 3 or 4 hours per show. So I guess 3 or 4, maybe 16, 15 hours.
Jeez.
Yeah, long time. And we did, and I was bringing up everything that anybody was giving me, and he was just able to, refute everything. And then also, he really brought up something I never really even thought about, was that a lot of the moon landing deniers will use things from NASA, like saying like, oh well, you wouldn't be able to withstand 250 degrees positive to 250 degrees negative. So they're giving facts that NASA gave you, but they're using those facts to say they didn't go to the moon. That's just very strange, because if they're liars, then maybe they're lying about the temperatures too. Like, why would you're taking from them something that you need to be true in order to prove them wrong? It just doesn't make any sense anymore. Where it's like, no, if NASA was going to fake the moon landing, then they would use temperatures that would work. They wouldn't give you temperatures that don't work and then say we went there. It'd be like them saying, oh, the moon's 1,000,000 degrees, and we went there and walked around. Well, everybody'd be like, no, you didn't, because you can't walk around in 1,000,000 degrees. So again, if they were going to do that and lie about it, they wouldn't say 1,000,000. They would say something that was actually doable. So once you start
Right.
realizing that, you're like, oh, well, we're getting all this information from them. And then the things that you're told about, like how Gus Grissom died, again, people believe like, oh, well, Gus Grissom hung a lemon on the limb, and so they killed him. But it's like, listen, when he died, that almost cost Apollo the entire program. So that was not what you would do. You wouldn't try and cost, if you're so animate about we're going to go lie to these people about the shape, you wouldn't kill somebody that's going to almost kill your program. So just things like that once you look at them in the correct light, and you kind of understand why we did it, and it wasn't really a scientific thing as much as it was like a prestige thing that used science to get there, right? They used the minds to get us there. And that's kind of why we haven't gone back, is there's, not that same push from the people that fund it to get us there, like there was when they needed it in order to make the Russia look bad. So
Right.
once I got to that kind of point, yeah, there was no more. I can't even give you any good evidence that the moon landing is fake, other than, yeah, we should go back. I
So
truly believe we should go back, though.
so if people are interested, all of that stuff with you and Dave McKeegan are online. I
Yeah.
also interviewed Dave McKeegan after I interviewed you, by the way, and that's how I know some of this. But so I went back and I did watch. I couldn't sit for the 14 hours, but I watched
Right.
a few hours of each of your. The thing that I remember you being stuck on was the parallax issue. How did you get past that?
Ooh.
Well, really, I mean, Dave just showing me.
And by the way, this was because there was footage from the lunar rover camera driving across the moon, and there's mountains in the distance, and you were sure that that was a painting, a backdrop, because there was
Right.
no parallax showing.
Well, it didn't change, right? So but again, I wasn't paying attention to the distance that it was traveled, and I wasn't going outside and looking at the real world. Like if you go outside and look at a mountain that's far away from you, and you just drive down your block or 2 blocks, well, the mountain's not going to change in size. It's that far away from you. So once you realize all that, again, it's easy if you're looking. Okay, I'm going to the moon landing stuff, and I'm looking for anomalies, and then you see that, you're like, oh, that mountain should move, but you're just saying that you're because yeah, if you drive far somewhere on the earth, and the mountain's going to get lower or higher based on driving away or to it. So yeah, he just really did a good job of being really rational and being calm. It's another thing a lot of Globers weren't. They would call you names, they would get mad, they would get upset, they'd get frustrated, and that just kind of ruins the conversation. Then it becomes more about a personal thing than it actually is truly looking at the evidence. And so that's what Dave did well, is he never got mad at me, never called me stupid, never said you're dumb. Just tried to, anything I had to say, just tried to give me the right answer. So he's a good guy. I really like the guy. I owe him a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah,
Do you think
I
that
suggest people look at his
oh,
channel. He's got really, really interesting stuff,
Very
and
good stuff.
yeah, he's
yeah.
got a lot of integrity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm wondering, Jaron, do you think that, kind of having that experience and having been on both sides of it now gives you more of an ability to have calm and rational conversations with people who disagree without uh, getting frustrated or ugly or condescending with people?
Kind of, but no. So if somebody's going to tell me that my trip was fake, then no, I lose it. I mean, if you watch the one we did the other night on my channel, I did well for about an hour, and then an hour in, I was telling him to shut the f up and dipshit this and
Oh,
so I mean, again, but he was basically sitting there saying, "Well, you guys didn't go. I know you didn't go," and we're like, because he was saying something about like, "I'm so smart. I actually look into things and I know the difference between real footage and fake footage," and I was like, "Dipshit, no, you do not. Dave and I were there." And you're saying that you know whether film is fake or not, and you're saying we didn't go. So I'm like, you don't know anything. So you get frustrated. But I do think I am in a good position to go against flat earthers because I know all their talking points. That's it.
Hmm.
Because I've done it, I've led it. So that's why I'm in a good position. But they all blocked me. So it's this double-edged sword where, well, yeah, I'm the best person to do it, but also I'm the one that they won't listen to. And I think they intuitively know that the last person they want to listen to is the person that was a flat earth for 10 years who's now saying he was wrong. They
so
want
at least one of them, maybe they're not watching you anymore, but they watched my interview with you, and on the YouTube YouTube video,
to hear
I
this.
copied off. Here's one of the comments from one of these people. The 24-hour sun does not exist in Antarctica at any time of the year. The final experiment was a complete hoax, nothing more than camera trickery to deceive people. The flat earth movement was infiltrated by several bad actors in hopes of derailing the movement. The truth can be found if you really want to find it.
Mm.
Oh boy.
We're a winner right there. And I guarantee that person doesn't have a good job and isn't making money and probably doesn't have a girlfriend or wife. And you can just kind of start to see. I did a video that was called my prediction for flat Earth for the next 20 years or 30 years, like up till 2050. And it was a funny video because went to the first year, like 2025. Here's the thing: if you're a flat earther, you'll make less money, you'll have less friends, you'll have,
Yeah.
you'll believe less things, you'll have less truth. And I said, well, let's go to 2026. Oh, you'll have even less friends, you'll have even less money. And I just kept going through the whole year. I was like, because
Oh
it's the truth.
no.
Really, there is nobody in flat Earth that's doing well. There's nobody who's in a good relationship because it really starts to break down every part of you. And that's what I think is hard for people to see. When they're in it, they feel like it's the world that's falling apart and they're maintaining. And that's not really what's going on. What's happening is that the world is moving on and you are stuck. And so to you, you see it like, oh, everybody else is has no clue. They're just going through life. And it's like you talked about before, the NPCs. They believe that people who don't care about the shape of the earth, are just NPCs. They're just here. I've tried to have conversations with these people. They're lost. They're like, well, on the Sims game, there's people who go to work, but they don't really, they're not really doing any work. I'm like, yeah, what does that have to do with real life? I'm like, well, maybe these people out there are just not really going to work. I'm like, no, they're going to work. They actually are doing work. I said, if you go to the Sims game, those people are not doing anything. If they're fake going to work, they're fake going to work. There's a simulation. But I'm like, in real life, everybody goes to work. They actually do something. Nobody's going to work and is simulated. So it's just weird how they fall down this rabbit hole, and I mean, again, like I said, they thought Charlie Kirk was a hologram or something. I'm like, in daylight in front of 3,000 people, like we don't have that ability. There's not a possibility to do that. And he's like walking in and out of the tent before it, and I'm like, so you think that he walked in and then they like switched it to a hologram scene? It's like literally, it is literally retardation
Well,
in a sense.
so space deniers have been doing that kind of thing for a long time, and the one I remember, which really hit me, was when Challenger exploded, right?
Yep.
Because people who believe they just believe rockets are launched and then fall into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean for some reason. And
Yep.
if they're supposed to be astronauts on it, they're not. They're in some underground bunker and they come out and get parachuted into the ocean. Well, since the rocket blew up on television, all of these people are dead now. What are they going to do with the people who are in the bunker? And there's a conspiracy theory that those people have been given false identities, and people go around putting photos of them on the internet as here is Krista McAuliffe, here is Chris Hadfield, not Chris, that wrong name.
Yeah.
Chris McAuliffe and the other people on that flight,
Judith Resnick.
Onizuka, and it's like, okay, there are people who look like them, and people take pictures of them and claim it's them, and it is horrible that they think
It's
that this
horrible.
is what was done by the government.
And you're able to find, if you find some picture, you can find, there's 350 million people in the country. You're going to find doppelgangers. You're going to find people that have the
Yeah,
same name that are similar looking. The Judith Resnick one isn't
yeah,
even the same spelling. And again, like if NASA's going to hide these astronauts, would they give them the exact same names? It's
yeah.
ridiculous. It's like you would give them fake identities. You'd have them change their hair. You wouldn't have like, hey, Judith Resnick, you're just going to go teach at this school under the name Judith Resnick. It's like it's
Well,
ridiculous.
the thing, yeah, with you being a clone, and I've heard the same thing that other politicians when they're shot and they miss, no, they actually did die, and the person serving there is a clone
Right.
now. Yep.
Yeah, and that's the problem with being a truther is that you're basically taught to deny everything, and then you're basically taught you can come up with whatever opinion you want. I mean, it's truth is subjective, and it's these sayings that people start to adopt, and they start to believe like that this is a supernatural existence, and that the Earth is a realm, and it's not a place. And I mean, none of that makes sense to me anymore because it's like, no, if it's a thing, you can touch it, so we can measure it, we can figure things out about it. It's not supernatural. So.
Well, yeah, and this really, again, really reminds me of some of the same things that many people who are recovering from religion have dealt with too, where you start to realize as soon as you deconstruct from this one belief, you have all of these other associated, attached beliefs and assumptions that you start to realize had all piled on because it made sense or you needed that related idea in order to continue your belief in the other thing, and then it really just kind of starts to all unravel, and that can be very disorienting. But I'm so glad that you made it out and that I appreciate that you had the courage and the integrity to come out and publicly let people know, hey, I changed my mind on this. And it's a good reminder that we are all susceptible to believing silly things sometimes, but we're not all great at recognizing and admitting when we're wrong. And that's the important piece because that's how we learn new
Right.
things. So thank you for doing that and sharing your experience tonight.
Yeah, no, thank you for recognizing that because it is, it's difficult to lose everything that you have, but at the same time, at least, and one thing I didn't do is I didn't attack the Globe believers. So that kind of helped me. Like Austin Witts, it's a guy that went down there with us that is a flat earther and still remains a flat earther. But the difference is for him, he spent all of his years basically calling everybody in the Globe Earth community names. So at that
Mhm.
point, it makes it much more difficult for him to think about leaving or switching because he wouldn't be welcomed. Whereas with
Yeah.
me, at least I didn't have these hate moments against these guys. I just ignored them basically. So a lot of them were more than welcoming and more, open arms, and were there for me the whole time to answer questions and to kind of help me and have me on their show and introduce me to their audience in a way that's at least better than here's this idiot who believed in the flat Earth, right? So, I have all those people to thank too for allowing me to do it.
Yeah. Well,
So how,
thank
how
you.
how did people who went down there with you, like Austin, who were flat earthers, not change their minds since you saw what you believe is incontrovertible evidence? How is that?
So he says that he thinks there's still. I mean, I heard him say today, or I heard somebody say that he said that he can't even he can't verify that we were where they said we were, which I think is absolutely insanity because we had GPS, so that told you where you were. On top of that, the sun being, like I said, at 15 degrees and 35 is the only place that would have that at that time was 80 degrees south. Anywhere else would have a different tilt of the sun. So we were at 80 degrees south. Does it matter, I guess, where on that 80-degree parallel circle we were? Not really. So it's, again, it's when you're a flat earther, you can use anything to invent any explanation for anything. I've heard him say before, like, well, the earth is just in the mind of God. We just exist in the mind of God. So he's just, and again, he's religious. And I think that that might be the difference. I wasn't religious, right? So I would say I believed in God, but I didn't believe the Bible was true. I didn't believe any of that, and so to remove myself from the flat Earth was fine. That didn't affect my faith, if you want to call it that, right? It doesn't matter to me. I mean, if I believe there's a creator, to me, the creator doesn't impact anybody's life or have anything to do with it, and it's not even a person. It's just like maybe consciousness or maybe a collective consciousness of some type, but it's not something that bars me from believing what evidence tells me. Right? Evidence is king. So if the evidence tells me the Earth is a sphere, then the Earth's a sphere, and there's no God that would make the world in such a way that the evidence would lead me to the wrong belief. That the collective evidence would be like, oh, God's tricking us, because that's what you have to believe now. If you're a flat earther who believes in God, then when they tell me, well, no, I still think, I say, well, then what God did is He made the world so that it is answerable in one word, sphere, and yet it's not. You're telling me it's a double refracted dome that has superfluid on top of it that causes reflection. I mean, I'm like, that's what you're saying is God is a deceiver, and I don't believe that. So,
Well, he
yeah,
put all the dinosaur bones in the earth to trick us and make it
they
look
think
like
that
they're
too, right?
billions of years old instead of, 6,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So they already believe that, and again,
Yeah.
the God of the Old Testament would be that kind of God, right? The one that's
Yeah.
going to trick people and try and
For some
lie to
reason.
people.
It's,
So
it's
yeah,
more
so
like Loki in the Norse mythology
there
or
you go.
the Avengers, right? Trickster God.
Yeah, trickster God. So again, the religious aspect of it is hard to get around because all the people that are so, and I wrote a post on Facebook recently where I said um, a lot of these Christians, so-called Christians, are so sure of their own belief in the flat Earth, even though the Bible doesn't specifically say that, that they've gone against the things that the Bible does say. Like it says, don't meander in little conspiracy theories and don't do these, and it's like telling them to do a bunch of things that they've just forgotten all about because they say the Earth's flat, so they're allowed to call people names and to, I mean, you go to my comments on my Facebook page, it's insane. I'll just say something, easy, simple, and then I get a flood of all these Christians that come in and say the most disgusting things you've ever seen. Like, how does Satan's balls taste? Just things like that.
Oh,
You're like, wow, this is like
Wow.
you're a Christian, and it's like, so I even tell people I wrote in this post, like, if God is real, if Christianity is real, you're losing your salvation by doing this. What you're doing is you're absolutely throwing away what the Bible's telling you to do in exchange for what you think the shape of the earth is. It's kind of sad to see.
and of course they thank you for the correction, right? The doctrinal biblical
Sure.
correction.
Yeah, right. No.
Oh,
Again,
that's funny.
I've seen Christians do the most craziest things. My brother-in-law, my wife's sister's husband, is a pastor, big pastor in Montana, and I watched firsthand. We went to one of his services. This is back 15 years ago in Montana, and he was doing a sermon on not having tattoos and how it's the temple and all this thing. And then about 4 years after that, my wife tells me, she goes, "Oh my gosh, you have to see Levi." I was like, "What?" And she goes, shows me a picture of him. I'm like, what did he get all those tattoos for? And then she's like, I don't know, he just got them all. And I'm like, but remember we were at that service and he was preaching about how that's bad? She goes, oh yeah, you have to watch his latest one. So I go watch this sermon that he gives, and now he's reading the same Bible verses, but now he's saying it's okay. He just like
Funny how that happens. You could
just
read the
switched.
Mhm.
opposite from reading the same
Oh
passages in the
man.
Bible.
Yeah, exactly. And so once you see that, you're just like, oh man, these guys are a piece of work. And it really all it is that you can take any words in a book and make them say whatever you want them to say. Just and that's what
That's
all pastors do. They just
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, there's the whole
that's the
thing of the
problem.
prosperity gospel, and it's supposedly it's harder for a rich man to enter heaven than a
right.
camel through the needle. No, but like send me money because God wants me to have money.
And if you want,
Jesus is a
your
capitalist now.
right. Yeah. So there's, I
I
mean,
love it.
the things in the Bible are disgusting, really, and surprising that it's gone this long. It makes sense to me, though. I guess they brought, especially when the Pope sent people over here to basically, um, subject all the natives and everything to. They basically were told if they don't convert to Christianity, then put them out to pasture. So again, a lot of people were forced into that belief, and then they had children who they taught the belief to. So I get it, but it's at this point hard to believe we have the percentage of people that we do in this country that is religious. It's pretty crazy. Although, the guy from the IIG, from the place that I gave, independent investigations group, he was telling me about the James Randi $1 million challenge, right? That,
Yeah. Yep.
right. So he was saying to me that he says, that they've never had somebody win that money. So they've never had anybody prove that there's any kind of ESP, or that they can, predict what number somebody's thinking
Yeah.
in
And any kind of paranormal ability was the
anything. But if you ask the country, it's like 84% of the country believes that it does happen, which is crazy. So we've never had anybody actually show it ever. And yet 84% of these, that just tells you humans are strange creatures that will believe what they want sometimes, not go by.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's sort of like the naive realisms. Well, sort of. It's like the anecdotal evidence. What your personal experience is and what a friend's personal experience is more important than any subject than what actual science shows.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So you have one friend who goes to a psychic who got lucky and told them something. She was a miracle. She told me this is no way she could have known, and therefore you believe in a psychic,
Right.
regardless of the fact that, as you said, no one has ever been able to prove this under controlled conditions.
Right. Not even one. So,
We're very good at fooling ourselves into believing
yeah.
all sorts of things, which brings me to another one of the questions that we've collected for you, which is how can we encourage more trust in experts rather than, doing your own YouTube research?
Yeah, I mean, I think people need to recognize how insane some of the things that this world gives us are. Like, if I asked anybody to explain to me how my cell phone communicates to, if my wife is sitting in the same room and I text her, what happens from that point? How do these messages? I mean, people don't even know anything. They would be lost. I mean, I think somebody asked one time, like, imagine that there's a huge bomb goes off and there's only a couple people left, and it's you and your wife. Like, if I would try to explain, so they'd be like, where does fire come from? And I'd say, oh, well, we will light matches. And they would say, well, what is a match? I'd be like, well, it's a stick with a red end of it. And they would be like, well, what, how do you make that? I have no idea. So, I mean, like, we really don't even know the smallest things, like how we couldn't even make a match. We couldn't, let alone a microwave oven, let alone, so there's so many things that we take for granted because of science, because people had their knowledge put together, their minds put together. Another fact that's crazy, did you know, and this is what they say, that there's no one person on the earth that could build a cell phone? That there's this, a cell phone is so highly technical that it's all these individual companies that build the component parts that they all have to go together, and then they build a cell phone. But like, no one person would be able to go out and grab all the things that they need by themselves. They would need companies to build the things. So it's like we really do need to work together as humans in order to have the things that we have, right? That's why we map the world. And again, could one person go out and map the world? Never. It's not even possible. However, collectively, we've mapped the world. So I just think once people, at least for me, I had to come to those conclusions myself and kind of start go, oh man, to just say like, oh, that's pseudoscience, or these guys don't know what they're talking about, or is it's a I'm gonna say it's embarrassing, but at the same time, it's like rude. It's rude to the people before us that have put the time and effort in to give us what we have today, and so to just start denying that those things even exist is a problem. So I know your question was, how do we get more trust um, in authority? Uh, I don't know. I don't know. I think that sometimes the news, the media, the TV, which is, we have to realize a lot of people watch TikTok, they watch the news, they watch this mainstream propaganda. And so if they see that any of that stuff comes out and it's just worded wrong, or that the news makes it sound like something is the case, like this comet that's flying by the sun right now that everybody's saying is an alien ship or something.
Three-Eye Atlas. It's
Oh, yeah.
it's full of aliens, according to channelers I see on TikTok, and they're about to redirect it, and they're going to land on Earth any day now.
So the problem with that is, right, that you have all these different outlets saying that, and you don't have anybody actually saying the opposite. So who's the scientist that's standing up and telling people that's not the case? You just don't have it. In fact, I heard Michio Kaku say yesterday that he think, oh, well, we'll see what happens. It could be, highly
Yeah,
technological.
he's not one of my favorite scientists. I've written about him.
Yeah.
Him and
Yeah, no.
Avi Loeb. Avi Loeb is now number one.
Well,
on my-
again,
And
here's the
it's
thing, right? Those guys that are the popular scientists are popular because they say things that are out of the norm, that are kind of
Yep. Yep.
right. So
right.
again, it's one of those things where you
Avi
actually,
Loeb makes a lot of money selling books about everything is alien.
yeah. So
And
there you go.
it's not as exciting to read a textbook and
Yeah.
learn about,
No,
basic fundamental elements of these subjects that are
No.
not telling you about a big cover up or some
right.
exciting, thing like that you can discover and,
Right.
go against the
But yeah,
mainstream
but
belief.
all right, but the fact so both of those people that got mentioned here are theoretical physicists, right? There's probably, I don't know, a million theoretical physicists on planet Earth, and there are two loony dunes, and those are the ones who get all the airtime because
Correct.
Mm.
that's what the people want to publicize because that's clicks, that's people
Right.
watching your news show or whatever, right? No one cares about the scientist says, no, it's just a comet with interesting characteristics which we're tracking.
So
Yeah.
this is a scary thing that has coming up that I don't even know if there's an answer to, and I don't even know if it ends in our country being viable anymore. Is that we now incentivize lies. So if you are let's say somebody gets shot like Charlie Kirk, if you want to do a good report on what happened, you have to wait. You have to wait until all the evidence comes out. You have to wait until you see all the angles. Well, that's not what gets you views. What gets you views is being the first one to go live and start talking about it. Well, the problem with that is you, of course, don't have any information. You don't have any of the facts. You don't have anything. But that's what people start talking about. And then other channels pick that up and they're all talking about each other's stuff. What you just got is a bunch of garbage. I knew as soon as that happened, don't watch any of these channels, don't listen to these people because they're going to be. And then I started hearing things of like, I was like, oh man, this all. Then started saying that Simpsons predicted it. I don't know if you've seen this stuff. Is now somebody can just go to an AI and say, make me a Simpsons episode where Charlie Kirk gets shot. It does it, and then you put it out and say, look at the Simpsons predicted it. And people are so lazy that they won't even do any research to check if that's true. They just share it, right? Sharing is so detrimental. I forgot who said it. Was it Mark Twain who said a lie gets around the world before the truth puts its pants on?
I don't know. That's one of those memes where everything on the earth was said by Mark Twain, so I never
Right.
believe it anymore.
I,
It
I
might
was
not
going to
be.
say, yeah, that is often attributed to him, but
Yeah,
it's a great example of something where we often attribute things to Mark Twain, and he
Right.
yeah.
probably didn't say them.
Right now. I don't
And,
know if
and
he's ever written
Abraham Lincoln said 97.7% of everything on the internet is fake.
it. That's
I
good.
love it.
Yeah. So I mean, but it is
Well,
the truth. It is the
yeah,
truth. The lie will get around so much faster.
Yes, yes.
It will get shared by all these truther groups, and none of them are doing any kind of follow up. And then if they find out it's wrong, they don't even make a retraction.
Yep,
They just let it
exactly.
keep going. So
That's the thing with psychics. Like every newspaper, magazine, puts an annual, sometimes monthly. These are the psychics, our favorite psychic who we have on staff predictions for this year. They don't have an edition that goes through and checks them all the next year and says, no, no,
of course
no,
not.
no, no, they don't.
Right. So that's the
right.
scary
Well,
thing is like TikTok is everything's fake. Any interaction that they have, any kind of these things that they'll have like a policeman come up to the window and they'll pretend like they're a sovereign citizen and the policeman will let them go, but it's all fake. It's an actor, not a policeman. But people aren't smart enough to pick that up, and then they go do it in real life, and then they find out when they're in jail that that's not true. So uh, I
It's
just see
it's
that
a
as a problem.
scary world. It's a
It is.
scary spherical world.
Well, yeah, but when you start incentivizing monetarily the
Yeah,
lies, then
yeah,
that's the problem, right? And so we don't. If you want to make money from Charlie Kirk's death, you have to go live and just start spitballing. Because if you wait 3 weeks, a month, 2 months for the actual truth to come out, by then you're not getting any views, you're not making any money. So
right.
unfortunately, that's the way it works for everything.
It
Yeah,
is. And shout out to our friends like Forrest Valkai, who do create really
good.
engaging, good, well-researched science content, but it's hard.
and
Uh,
Erica, don't forget
Oh,
Erica.
yes, absolutely. We had a great episode with her. Yes, they're out there. So yeah, absolutely. We'll link to their episodes if people want to have some more good science in their YouTube algorithm. Those would be great places to start. And it's about time for us to wrap up. But Rob, do we have time for one more question? Maybe a speed question?
Oh, I don't know. Okay. I don't know if this is going to be speed, but it's an interesting one, so I want to ask it. So, someone wrote in the comments, you brought up that when saying anything to flat earthers, they will somehow use it against you. So, should a flat earther go up to someone and start asking questions like, why don't you feel the earth's spinning and things like that? What's the best way to deal with them when they approach you and say things like that?
Wow, that's a tough one. So, I mean, because I want to say that, sometimes they're just too far gone, but that's a rude thing to say. I I don't know how you would address them, but I think if you ever start calling names, that's not right. If you ever try to make them feel dumb or anything like that, that's going to further put them in that position to where the way I would describe it is like if you told your brother that the Earth's flat and he says no, the Earth's a globe. As soon as you call him a moron and he calls you an idiot, now you guys have dug your feet in, and neither person is really at that point actually going for the truth of the matter because now they're protecting the name calling and they're trying to win the argument that way. So, and I do see that a lot where somebody will say they think the Earth's flat and then the person will just call them a bunch of names. That's just further pushing that person into that belief. Nobody gets yelled at until they're an idiot and then says, "Oh, I'm an idiot." Oh, I'm dumb. I didn't know that, and now you're right. So it's better to
Yeah.
just talk to them. And like I said about that, me being on Cameo now, when I talk to a person that's a conspiracy theorist, I don't do that, right? So I'll never go at them and say like, "Oh, you're just being really dumb. You're being really." It's more about walking them through kind of the thought process of how we get to places and like, well, could the Earth be so big that people on the sphere wouldn't know it's a sphere? Things like that, to where I'm getting them to start the spinning where I say, okay, well, if we're in an airplane, if you're going 300 miles per hour, do you know if all of a sudden the plane's going 1,000 miles per hour? Would you know? No, you wouldn't know, right? So again, if you're moving with the air that's you're contained in, then you wouldn't feel that speed. So it's the same thing on the Earth. We are like a giant plane as we're moving, and the air is moving with us in a way that we don't feel it because it's like the air on an airplane. So again, then they start asking questions. Well, what about the wind? How come it's Coriolis? And you're like, well, yeah, on an airplane, could the air that's traveling in the plane be blown in any direction? Sure. There's wind on that plane. So if you can kind of walk them through some ideas, and again, never expect somebody to agree with you right away. You're planting seeds. And when you plant those seeds, just know that somewhere down the road, and if you can think for your own self, if you've ever come to some realization, it was usually on your own. Usually it's because maybe you heard something at a conference or you heard somebody say something, but you were home and you were looking things at yourself and then it comes to you. And I think humans just like that. They like when they figure things out. They don't want to be told that they're wrong and that this is the truth. They'll fight that. People will fight you, but they'll go home that night and then they look on the internet and they start, or they look into a book or they ask some people and then they start to realize they were wrong and they can slowly get out of it that way. But if you've called them a name, then I don't even think that's the case. They just chalk it up to, oh, here's another person that doesn't believe. They're just an NPC. I know the truth. They don't know the truth. And I think that's damaging. So just, I would say, don't call people names. Does it mean that they're dumb because they believe in flat Earth? Well, it means that they have wrong information. And I think anybody can be dumb about a subject if they believe wrong information. If you have a bad foundation, how can you build a good house on that? You can't. So just recognize that that's all it is. They've got a bad foundation. They somewhere went wrong with their ideas of thinking. But I hear it all the time. I hear people say things all the time. I'm like, man, they just don't get it. I saw a guy talking about a canal yesterday. He's like, well, the canal drops 700 feet, but in the datum it says it's only 1 foot lower here on this side than it is over here. It's like, you can't have it both ways, Globers. It can't be 700 feet below and it can't be 1 foot low. It's like, no, it can, because they're talking about, a line from a tangent drop is 700 feet, but on the curved Earth, yeah, the two places can be level. They can be 1 foot off. But again, it's just he's got a wrong um, line of thinking, and no one's actually ever explained it to him what level means. Flat earthers think level means flat, horizontal. They don't know that level means what it does on a sphere Earth. And then they'll say, well, they will use a level to make things level. So you're saying a level's a sphere? No, the level measures locally level, which is in a world large like the Earth, a sphere. But yeah, where you're at, you'll never need to know that. You just build a house, build a level. You're fine.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thanks for
Thank you
sharing
guys for
those
having me. I do appreciate it.
insights. Yeah, this has been a really interesting conversation. I love that term, and I've learned a lot. And I know your experience has resonated with a lot of folks here. So we
Good.
appreciate you joining us and sharing. And we'll definitely drop your links in the chat here so people can find more of your
Great.
content.
You want me to
Uh,
type it in there or what you want me to do?
yeah,
You want me to
absolutely.
type
If
in
you
the
want
chat?
to type it in,
Cool.
We
that
have
would be
them to cut and paste in the
Oh, you do? Cool. You do
doc.
it. I don't have to come back and
okay.
paste. You have that.
Well, then
Well, I
we'll
appreciate you
drop
guys having
those.
me.
Yeah.
Very good.
And thank you everybody for coming and joining us. Stick around for the hangout. If you want to continue the conversation, don't forget to join us next week, same bat time, same bat channel, and we'll be starting at the top of the hour. So if you usually join late to skip the introduction, you don't have to do that anymore. We're just going to start with our guest at the top of the hour. So looking forward to that. And don't
Ooh,
forget.
somebody posted we forgot to show the poll.
Oh yeah, okay, we can do that in the Hangout. Let's start off the Hangout with that. And don't forget to follow us online. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and of course YouTube, where you can find previous episodes of RfRx. And with that, let me hand it over to Rob. And I am going to hand over the host powers to Rob as well, because I have to go ahead and log off, but I hope everyone has a fabulous hangout.
All right, thank you,
Thanks so much.
Carva. So I didn't ask you, Jeran, how late can you stay?
I didn't really have a time. I mean, if you want me for a couple more minutes, we can do it. Do you have more
Okay.
questions or?
Yeah, so normally what we do is we end the recording after Gail says something. I think Gail's going to say something. You're going to say something, Gail? And then we end the recording and people kind of can unmute themselves and ask directly. So you can stay as long as you can or not. All right, Gail, over to you.
Sure, I'll wrap this up. Thank you everyone for coming. Jeran, that was remarkable. What an incredible experience, and your willingness to share and your humility with taking this long-held belief and this fervently held belief and deconstructing it and dissecting it, and then not going and hiding in a cave somewhere, not wanting to talk about it, but sharing it with others and being willing to put that out there. I am so impressed with what you have done. And I want to also give a shout out. For many years, we have partnered with Anthony Magnabosco and Street Epistemology. This session tonight reminded me so much of the skill set that you can develop, which is this different skill set yet than we use on the helpline to help folks as they're deconstructing. Street epistemology is a very unique approach to helping people recognize and identify in their own lives, is there a belief, and getting them to come to the realization, is there any possibility there could be another explanation, that kind of thing. It's very gentle. It's not confrontational. As a lawyer and in my basic personality, that's a hard thing for me to do. When you hurt my feelings a little bit, Jeran, when you said, don't call them stupid and don't argue with them. I'm kidding. I know not to do that, but it's a difficult thing when you want to debate and you want to argue. And when you're so frustrated with yourself for having believed it because you have this opinion of yourself. Why did I believe that for so long anyway? Chasing that rabbit. I so appreciate your sharing your experience and your sharing and your willingness to share with others. And I was particularly impressed with the fact that these Cameo folks maybe do want to talk to you. And there are folks, you may not reach everybody, but it's the starfish. You may reach that person or that person. So thank you for sharing all that. I hope everyone will hang out. We'll stay for the hangout for a little bit and ask the questions that you didn't get answered for. And don't forget to join us next week, but come early because we're not doing our protracted introduction time. So make sure that you come here on time. I look forward to seeing everybody next week and enjoy the hangout.